The next step in our Final Frontier game is to add a spaceship that we can actually control. And so we are going to create some more sprites from a strip. If we go ahead and create our new sprite, this is going to be SPR spaceship. And we're also going to put an underscore still, because what we're going to create first is a spaceship that we can just turn using the arrow keys, and then we are going to have one that's actually like flying in a boost mode, and that will be later. So firstly we'll get the still spaceship. Now remember, if it's from a strip, you go straight to the edit sprite and then up to the menu, File, Create from Strip. Here we're going to select the spaceship still strip, and that has 36 frames or 36 subimages. So notice we have to change these values. We have to change the parameters and let it know how many individual frames we have. So we have 36. The number of images per row is 36. And then we have to give it the correct values for the width and the height. So we will bump that up and see what happens if we do 64 by 64. That we can tell isn't correct. So what we need to do is experiment by looking at the tutorial in the book. If you're following along with the book, you can tell that these are each 100 by 100. So I'm going to go ahead and put that one in, but if you didn't know, then you would just have to experiment with the numbers. So here we can see that the spaceship has 36 different images. Now I'm going to stop here and let you think about it. It has 36 separate images, and each image is pointing in a different direction of our 360-degree circle. So since we have 36 images, we know that each one represents about 10 degrees of the circle. Remember that for when we're creating our actions and events. The other thing that's a little bit different here is that we're going to change the point of origin. Now, you may not be able to see it, but the point of origin by default is x0, y0, so there's an extra bit of a white line up in the top. And that means if there was a collision or if there's a point of rotation, it's going to be, the origin point is going to be 0, 0. Now, since we're going to shoot bullets from the spaceship, it would make much more sense if we centered the point of origin so that the bullets will appear to be coming from the center. And also, the other thing, when we're rotating it, it's going to rotate around the center of the spaceship instead of rotate around this top corner. So changing that point of origin is quite important. The next thing is creating our object. So this will be OBJ spaceship, and it's the still version. We'll use the spaceship still sprite, and this will have a depth of 50, which will put it between the meteorite and, I'm sorry, between the spaceman and the meteorite. Now on this one, on its create event, we want to give this one a change sprite. I'm sorry, we want to add a step event first. And that's where we want to put our change sprite. So what we'll do is on every sort of tick in the step event, we are going to change what frame or what sub-image this is using. So what we will say is we want to take the direction and divide it by 10. Now remember I said that there are 36 images and there are 360 degrees of a circle. So what it'll do is it will look at what direction it's currently pointing and divide that by 10, and it will use that particular sub-image. So for example, if it is pointing in direction 40, that's an example they give in the book, divided by 10, it'll use the fourth image. So that way the spaceship sprite will change to reflect the rotation that it's at in a 360 degree circle. So every time as it's floating, it will change. The other thing that we need to do is we need to have a move free, and we want to add that to that same step event. So we say start pointing in direction, so the same direction that it's facing, and we want that to move at a speed of 1. So what's going to happen is it will look like it's floating through space, and then we're going to be able to manipulate its direction with the arrow keys. The next thing we're going to do is add those. So what we want is we want a keyboard event, and when we press the left arrow key, we want it to change by about 10 degrees of the circle. So if we say pressing the left, then we want to change that move free, and we take its current direction and we add 10. Can't type. And we add 10. And it will stay at that speed of 1. Then we want to say what happens when we push the right. So when we push the right, we also want it to have a move free, but change its direction -10 at a speed of 1. So if we think about what all these things are doing, in the step event, it's always looking at the sprite's direction and then selecting the correct sprite depending on what direction it's facing. And it sets its direction of movement into the current direction that it's facing. Every time we press the left, it's going to take its current direction and add 10 degrees, and that will make it move anti-clockwise. And every time we press the right, we'll subtract 10 degrees, and that will make it move clockwise. So to test that out, we need to put a spaceship in the room. And play. So notice that it's just floating, I can use my arrow keys to spin it around. And notice the sprite changes, and it makes sure that it has the appropriate sprite for the direction that it's going. So we'll save, and in the next tutorials we will look at keeping the spaceship within the boundaries so that it doesn't just float off, and we will also look at duplicating objects and creating a boost so that it flies more quickly.